Our panelists are His Excellency Mohamed Ben Amor, Director General, Arab ICT Organization, Dr. Almerindo Graziano, CEO, Cyber Ranges, Craig Johns, member of the GFCE Foundation Board.
Please, gentlemen, take your seats. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us today on this session on building capacity for the Global South. My name is Alexandra Topalian, and it's a pleasure to be here today. Now, we have seen how least developed countries face some of the toughest cybersecurity challenges. From limited resources to technical gaps, these vulnerabilities don't only affect the nation, but also create vulnerabilities across the global system. So to discuss this pressing topic, I have here three very distinguished panelists. Please welcome His Excellency Engineer Mohamed Ben Amor of the Arab ICT Organization, Mr. Craig of GFCE, and up until last year he was the Director of Cybercrime at Interpol, and Dr. Almerindo Graziano, the CEO of Cyber Ranges. So delighted to welcome you gentlemen today. Your Excellency, Engineer Ben Amor, let's begin with you. As part of the IACT's role involving facilitating the support to LCDs, how do you facilitate the resources of more affluent nations in order to help the least developed countries? And can you share some examples with us of how you do that?
Yeah, thank you, Alexandra, for this question. My pleasure to be here in front of you. Yes, the Arab ICT Organization, ICTO, maybe it's more simple than IICTO,
yes.
is playing a crucial role in the Arab region. And as all you know, the Arab region, there is very advanced countries in digital and general manner, and also in cybersecurity. We have champions, among them Arabia Saudi, Emirates, Qatar, but also we have some LDCs countries which need special attention because, you know, cybersecurity is a cross-border issue, and then when we have some weakness, some part, it's all the region will be impacted about this phenomena. So there is a big role that is involved to Arab ICT Organization to take the hand of these LDCs and try to make them reach the level of our champions. And to be honest, let's say that there is a lot of efforts that are made by developed countries in our region in order to help these LDCs, and our organization is playing a crucial role in order to benefit from these advantages that we have in these very advanced countries, and to support our LDCs in many issues. First, in elaborating some strategies, mainly for cyber security, and the first one was elaborated in 2022 and adopted by Arab ICT ministers, and then there were the creation of Arab Cybersecurity Ministers Council, a new Ministers Council in the region, and since that time the responsibility of elaborating the strategies for the whole region was involved to do this new Arab Ministers Council. But we continue to help. This is our role to play in the Arab Common Works, and we support now the new Ministers' Council, which took a decision 2 days ago in order to involve all the regional organizations in the work of this Ministers' Council.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. It's great to hear this united front of Arab countries coming together in support. Fantastic. Dr. Graziano, let's talk about an important challenge, and that is bridging the skills gap. Many countries, they focus on buying technology, but you emphasize human skills. So can you please give us a bit of perspective on why hands-on training is so critical for LDCs in particular?
Well, hands-on training is very important because as human beings, we learn through doing things. And in fact, if you look at the very famous pyramid of learning, right? So at the very bottom, so how we best learn is by teaching others. Okay, so by doing and then by teaching others. So through the experience, and that prepares us for the real job. One of the important things about implementing this in action is also, and we are doing, for example, at global level in collaboration in private partnership with the government. For example, we have a collaboration with the Ukraine Triple SKIP since the war began, where instead of sharing cyber threat intelligence, okay, so the traditional approach is to share cyber threat intelligence to advise on the threat actors and the attacks that are coming. That is important because it gives you a level of preparation, but it doesn't literally prepare you for what's coming. From a hands-on experience perspective, it's important to also emulate the real threat actors, the real attacks that are ongoing, so that people can experience the attack, experience the real threat, and develop through hands-on training the muscle memory that allows a quick response to a problem. So hands-on learning is fundamental, and we see an amazing trend in the last few years in embedding that into the curriculum in workforce development. For sure, is very important.
Fantastic. So hands-on training, nothing better than practicing at the skill, and it's tailored and customized training, so very different from traditional ways of education. Can you give us some concrete examples of success stories where this has worked in LDC countries?
Absolutely. So one of the success stories that we have, and we have quite a few, is here in Saudi Arabia. We collaborate with SITE, for example, and the ability to translate the threat actor and that are localized, that are relevant to the region, compared to threat actors that can be elsewhere, and developing threat emulations which can then translate in real world experience and prepare people to respond to such security incidents. Another example we had, this one was with Ukraine, where we took a threat actor that was active in Ukraine, and we organized a cyber exercise, a transnational cyber exercise with the US DoD and also the Ukrainian, where we basically were exporting that experience to provide hands-on immediate learning capabilities, so that once the threat actor hits the critical infrastructure, for example, we already know how to respond and react to that.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much, Dr. Graziano.
Sorry, can I just build out on that point a little bit?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Jones.
Earlier this week, I was at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs here, and we had a really interesting round table about roles and responsibilities, and taking it from a regional side to delivery of exercising. And what came out during that was, governments own a policy and the security for a nation. Private sector own the critical infrastructure. And I think a number of people in the room here have been involved in these sort of, let's write a paper, let's discuss it further. But when you do the exercising, quite often the real world pressures are not put in there, and for a number of different reasons. And the maturity level in different countries is totally different. Your triangle you were talking about, I use it for countries as well, and I say top countries, probably about 20 to 30 countries have got good capability, good capacity, can do stuff, but maybe not share. Okay. A whole tranche in the middle there that don't have capability capacity, but they can be nudged along. But the majority of countries don't have that capability capacity. So that comes back to that strategy point, and the ICT here in the Arab ICT They've done a lot of work in that space. So you've got the agreement on the regional level and then the delivery at that national level, and some real pieces of work.
Very true and very invaluable indeed. Mr. Jones, let's discuss how we can embed cybersecurity into the development programs, and in order to not treat them as an afterthought, but instead to create both policy and technical impact.
Thanks. A lot of that comes from the work, for example, of the Global Forum for Cyber Expertise. It was spun up 10 years ago by, let's say, developed countries. So it was the US, UK, the Netherlands, putting together a whole different range of countries, but saying, right, what are the challenges we're facing? Well, the first one is how do we write strategies? Because you can't really do anything until you have a strategy. What's identification of the problem? The second part is what comes in that, where you have critical infrastructure, you have law enforcement, you have policymakers. There's lots of different parts within that. So over 10 years, the Global Forum Cyber Expertise has worked along this pathway. They work directly with countries and say, right, what are the needs? And then you look at donors and try to match up the donors to the countries. Now that's worked fairly successfully. It's moved now into more regionalisation delivery model because it works better where you have an aggregating effect. But that relies on funding, and I think this is the challenge a lot of countries and organisations face, is yes, there's a priority to start with when normally there's a big major incident or the geopolitics come into it, but the last 2 years it's really shifted, or 3 years it's really, really shifted. Countries are now focusing more on their internal defence. What does that look like? And we are going back into the discussions around looking at really the physical hardening of things, you know, how big's the army, how big's the Air Force, you know, drones, things like that. And cyber is now going into that side part, but we've got to bring that into the discussion around, you know, cyber is national security. So let's talk about it in national security lens rather than cyber, because the prioritization that's put into it by countries, we've got to change that language now as well.
Okay, so would you then say that the number one priority or the number one challenge is the funding?
Yeah, I think genuinely it is. There's a finite pot of money, so we look to global bodies such as the United Nations to really shine the light on what's going on for their member states. We look at the World Bank. What are the initiatives of the World Bank? But the World Bank can work mainly just into countries, and countries have to make a request. But the World Bank's done a lot of work as well, producing some really fantastic evidence-based information there about, well, this works in this country and we need this amount of money, and then there is money then becomes available. So it's understanding that maybe the times have changed in terms of going to that single donor. We need to maybe look at an aggregation of a pot of funding, which can then take the geopolitics. You know, I live in this ideal world of Craig, where we take that side out and we're able to identify this is where the most harm is potentially happening, or this is where we need to develop, and then ensure the funding is placed into there and those countries are prioritized.
Well, that's a very interesting idea, actually, aggregation. And Your Excellency, you must know this firsthand, that partnership between government, between the private sector, and other organizations. How can we build those innovative partnerships in order to scale to LDCs?
Yes, of course. Today in our digital world, no one can work alone. It's a fact, and we need all to work among this orientation. So for the Arab ICT organization and all what we do, we involve the private sector, we involve the academia sector, we involve also the civil society sector. Even when we elaborated the strategy, all the lines that were written in perfect coordination. And today, the key of success is the magic world of multi-stakeholders or hybrid partnerships. So here in our region, there is some organizations under the League of Arab States which represent the private sector, which represent also the civil societies. And we are working hand in hand in order to be more efficient in our work. So this is our way of working, and I think that today in the digital world there is no choice other than working with in a multi-stakeholders manner. Yeah.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Monsieur Ben Amor. Dr. Graziano, taking on this topic of involving the private sector, do you believe that enough is being done in involving them and in supporting this digital transformation for the LDCs, or can more be done?
I think the private sector is very often involved. I mean, the private sector is driven by sort of driving business. I think the problem is the way the collaboration is developed. Because I think when it comes to collaboration with the government, the partnership should be more about enabling and empowering rather than creating dependency. So the traditional approach in driving, for example, workforce development, cyber capability development, is usually about acquiring products, technologies, and when it comes to capacity development, is about being trained. But that is not sustainable, because it's the moment the funding stops, before the moment the donors are no longer there, then there is an interruption of that process. I believe that the collaboration with industry or with the private sector should be about empowering and providing the tools and the empowerment to then develop the programs. I think the myopic, often driven by sort of the business approach, is that the need to create that continuous flux of funding, revenue. The reality is there is always something to do. There is always the next excellence to be achieved. If you start from the empowerment in one area, you can then progress and build collaboration on the next point of the next step up. So I think it's more about empowerment in that kind of collaboration.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, there are steps to take, and if the foundation is not there and is not solid, then we cannot really move on to the next. Yes, Craig?
And I think it builds out a sustainability model.
Yeah.
So
Right.
you look at the UN, have memberships, they pay a membership fee. Interpol's the same. So there is a fee that goes into an organisation, and how do you then use that? We talked about training. When I was the director of cybercrime at Interpol, we did a lot of training, because police, we love a training course, and then on a Friday we get a certificate. But we changed that, and we said, right, we have tools and platforms that are available to our member countries. How do we adapt those to make them more operational? So we work with the private sector. So we got the data sets from the private sector that identified where countries were suffering cybercrime, or it was being attributable to those countries. In Africa, we set up a regional desk. So we had staff contracted into Interpol, delivering the training, but they'd only ever deliver a training when there's an operation on the end of it. And the private sector held that information. So we were able to identify, the internet service providers that were hosting bad stuff. We were able to identify those criminals, across the country, but in Nigeria in particular. And then we worked with those countries, and we made sure they could come onto the tools and platforms. We could put the data on there so it was secure, it would be pulled off, and then they would go and do the arrests. And people want to look at the Interpol website. There's lots of fantastic work going on at the moment. Now that's project funded, but we try to make it sustainable as well, because we train people up. And as you said, they will then train others, but we provided the backbone as well. And I think looking at it maybe through an operational side of what are we actually delivering? Are we reducing harm? Are we protecting communities? And when you can talk in that sort of narrative, but give really clear, these were the outcomes and this is what happened.
And I think that overall the end goal is to have this one united, sustainable ecosystem, and that is what we're trying to achieve here. Ladies and gentlemen, we are sadly all out of time, but it was a pleasure talking to you and getting your insights. Please give them a warm hand of applause.